a pleasure this evening to host the showing of Women in the Dirt.
On behalf of the ASLA NCC chapter, I want to welcome everybody for coming to this premiere event. We have some special guests here tonight. We have the filmmaker, Carol Ann Stoney. We have two of the women who are featured, Cheryl Barton and Annie Cochran, who I just heard have not seen this movie, so we're all seeing it with them. You might want to watch their faces. Tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to watch, okay? We're going to sit back, watch, relax. Then we're going to talk. We're going to have a little Q&A. We brought back, Linda Jewell came back from her sabbatical just for this. And Louise Mazinga are going to handle some Q&A with Carol Ann and Cheryl and Andy. So that's kind of the second part of tonight. And then third, we're going to celebrate. Thank you to Cagman and Dorward, who are our sponsors for the reception tonight.
It really was an extraordinary achievement. I think one of the delightful things about it was I expected to have it to be a great piece about what women had accomplished, but I also found it really, as well as the field, but I found it a wonderful piece about California in particular, and what it means to design for a region. And as someone who's mostly worked on the East Coast, it was, I just found the projects really so extraordinary. Because I think I'm still an Easterner mentally, but when I looked at all of that incredible work, all of it, and I think it was to the credit of the set designers, but also to the filmmaker, it said, it just exposed the incredible potential of the California landscape. It was just beautiful.
There's so much out there. This was just a tiny bit of what beauty has been created here.
Being the first film that has sort of a general appeal, I'm hoping that it will get on television, and I don't have contacts with PBS or HBO. If any of you do, please let me know that your father or your uncle is a producer or something, and we'll get in contact. I think this is the kind of thing I'd like to see on television. It would, because I'm a gardener, you know. Where the film is going next is into film festivals, and we're hoping through film festivals that it gets some attention so that it can go on television. And the reason I say television is twofold. One is I really think that the film, I'd like to see it get out there in the world so that people understand what a landscape architect is.
The more skill, the more successful you got, the bigger the obstacles got. So I don't know specifically what obstacles, it doesn't matter. But there was an incredible relationship between the more of a threat you were in the world to other powers, the more obstacles you were going to have. I know you have lots of obstacles. So many obstacles.
Yeah, I feel the same thing. I mean, early in my career, I think being a woman actually helped me. I worked in the National Park Service, I worked in the Forest Service, I did this job because I was a woman. And if you had asked me at a certain point, like, I don't know, when I was in my late 20s, if there was any kind of sexism, I would have said absolutely not. I went to school with guys, you know, I was sort of, you know, accepted as one of the guys, and I did my work. And I think when I got to my 30s, then I started to realize that it was okay to get to a certain point, and we said this too. Right, yeah. You know, it's when you get to a certain point, and then you're competing, then things...
It's not good for girls.
No, then it got harder.
I guess I'll just add the third ditto to that. And I came from architecture, so I'm a little bit jaded in that it looked really open and wonderful in landscape architecture in comparison. And so particularly in the early years when I made the transition, but I certainly saw a difference even in academia, which is, you know, this great open place of equity, supposedly. There were opportunities, but there was also a real ceiling that I felt as one got more senior in the field.
I mean, I still feel like it happens. I mean, I don't think you ever get to the point where it stops. I think you get a certain amount of recognition every time you're competing at a higher level, but I just had something happen recently where I think if I was a guy, I would have gotten the project that I didn't get. So I think it does still happen. You know, even when you have lots of awards and you've done a lot of things, I still think it happens.
You have to think of it as a sport.
But Cheryl Barton worked with Dan Kiley, and what an influence he had on her life. And when we got to the cutting room, those beautiful stories had to wind up on the cutting room floor because we couldn't put everything in the film. But I did ask all of the women a very important question: if they had anybody that influenced them, an artist, another landscape architect, anybody in particular, and 5 of the 7 women mentioned Robert Irwin. And when we were editing, I finally said, we can't put this in. We can't put it, I mean, this is going to sound like the Robert Irwin show. So all those comments had to get dropped, but I know that he was very influential in a lot of landscape architects' hearts.
When we say Robert Irwin, we're not talking about the Getty. That's right. We're talking about altered perception and sort of ways of thinking about space. But I think it was really interesting. This goes to the California comment. I've read a lot about minimalist artists, and certainly that's been a big influence of my work. And Robert Irwin is one. But I think in California, it's about the light. And the minimalists that came to California really thought about light and space in a very different way. And I think that's kind of that undercurrent for that sort of very sort of place-specific, West Coast-specific landscape that we really think about light space in a very different way than landscape architects working on the East Coast or other parts of the country.
Well, you know, I'm proud to say it made me feel really ancient. Pam Palmer, I taught in her very first studio. It was the first studio I taught at Harvard. So I like to hope that she might have thought that I wasn't somewhat of a mentor. So I'm kind of at the other end. I have to say that in my case, my mentors were male because I think when you get, maybe Louise is a little younger than the rest of us, but for us, that's all I had.
I think the most surprising thing that Dan said to me, and the most potent thing Dan said to me was, he had done enough research on me when I first met him to know that I had been working in environmental art. And he said, well, you know, you do the work. I actually asked him the question about, you know, what's up with the geometry, Dan? And his answer was, well, you work as an environmental artist. Why do you do that? I said, well, it's to make people see the landscape. Because when you put an insertion into the landscape, it enhances people's perception of not just the insertion, but the landscape that resonates. And he said, exactly, that's why I do the lines. That's why I do the geometry, because it makes people see their environment.
I don't know, I'm always trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. I mean, we have done a lot of high-end residential work. It's about 50% of our practice, and I think someone said in the film that it's a great way to learn. And those projects, I think it was me, I said that, you know, those projects get built like 2 to 3 years, and you can build a lot of things, and you can learn a lot. And I worked on really large projects earlier in my career, and I couldn't wait to get back to building them. And now we've been doing that for a while. Now I'm wanting to do bigger projects, and we have. So we still keep that mix, because I think it's great for people in the office to learn by seeing things built and seeing it all the way through. And then, but I think it's nice to have both, so you feel like people don't have to have a special invitation to come and see your projects or see your work, that it's out there in the public realm.
I think we're trying to scale up and be in the urban context. I mean, we've added green urbanism to our sort of tagline intentionally because we do those kinds of things. So we're trying to do bigger urban systems. I don't think it makes a difference whether I'm a woman or not.
Helping make this happen.
Thank Caroline for all her hard work in telling this story. It's just fabulous that you've done this.
agree, and we did this film, as we started doing the next film, I had people asking me if I was going to be licensed, fellow students, if I was going to get my license and hang my shingle and become a landscape architect. And all I knew was that after filming 7 really brilliant women, that I didn't have enough time left in my life to become the kind of designer I would want to become. When they're talking about being in their 20s and 30s, and you see all this gray hair up here now, these are women that have worked very many years to learn their craft. And I don't have enough time to be this kind of designer, so I'm going to stick to film and hopefully promote the professional landscape architecture in another avenue.